Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today, finally got back into this channel again. This time I'll be ranking all the classic Sonic games. Now the reason why I've been so busy not being on this channel was my other channels. I recently made a DJ channel, being like lame music edits of video game music, and I feel like this should have existed already. And the museum channel has been blowing up a lot, even though I don't want it to, as it's filled with nothing but content ID claims. Because it's a bunch of video game music that isn't owned by me, but I made like Toad covers, AI covers of it. But no, everyone's enjoying that one instead. It almost got like 300 subscribers. And then my main channel is just like, you know, oh, you can't have anything blowing up on your main channel because everyone's enjoying Live and Learn Minecraft Villager AI cover on your second channel. Because this and my main channel, I feel like, is the only one I want to get to like monetize if I could become popular enough. Probably not on my YouTube thing. Only because it's probably like the least controversial when it comes to content ID claims. The only one that I have between this channel and my main channel is my steamed hams YouTube poop that I recently made on my main channel. Now anyways, like I said, I'm going to be ranking every single classic Sonic game. The rules here is, mainline and spin-offs are allowed. No generations or forces, because those don't fully count. Just because he plays classic Sonic means nothing. Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles and Blue Sphere, and Sonic 3 and Knuckles is all mixed into one game. Sonic 2 and Knuckles and Sonic 2 is mixed into one game. Any ports of games that are actually slightly different in the past, like Sonic Spinball Genesis to Sonic Spinball Game Gear is allowed, but other than that, we're looking at fully the original versions, like the Genesis version, so no, we're not like immediately putting Sonic 1 in S tier because a 2013 mobile remaster exists, and yeah, that is basically it. I tried my best to play these at their original form as much as possible. If anything, they might have been emulated, but that's their own fault for them not re-releasing their games. Japan exclusives. First up, the one that started all, Sonic 1. It's a great way to start off the series, but it gets, other than Green Hell Zone, it just goes downhill from there, so I'm gonna put it in C tier, because Marble Zone was like, it's okay in my opinion. Then Spring Yard is fine, Labyrinth sucks, Starlight was great, Scrap Rain is like, oh, at first it's just the final level, that's fine, but then Act 3 is just Labyrinth Zone Act 4. So yeah, C tier. And then next we got Sonic Eraser. It's an obscure puzzle game released exclusive to Japan under a Sega Internet thing for the Genesis, I guess. I think that's what it is. Don't mind the mock-up of the box art, by the way. This is all I can find that actually looked decent and looked like a classic Sonic game. Other than that, I didn't want to use like the modern looking one because I believe there's like some weird mobile port of it. D tier, only because it's a puzzle game. It's basically like you match two or more of the same shapes together and then they like erase from the board, stuff like that. Now Sonic 1 Game Gear. This one's special to me. It has completely different zones compared to Sonic 1 Genesis, other than like Green Hill Zone, but it has like slightly different level design anyway. Not slightly, a very different level design. And apparently there was like an unused Marble Zone at one point, but that would have been pretty cool, but oh wow. But honestly, I like it a lot better than Sonic 1 Genesis. I know that some people are like, but what about the tiny screen? I don't care about screen size, guys. So if there's any Mario fans that actually like watched this video, probably not. I actually prefer Super Mario Bros. Deluxe for Game Boy Color and over Super Mario Bros. 1 on NES by a long shot. Even for extra content alone. I don't care if it's a screen size, even like Super Mario 64 DS, I find a lot better than Super Mario 64. I don't care about the controls, I don't care about the screen size, it's just more content, it makes it, and plus there's slight little differences in between it that just make it a lot better. Plus it comes with Luigi Casino on Super Mario 64 DS, so I don't care what you say. So, I like Sonic 1 Game Gear a lot better. I first experienced this with Sonic Mega Collection Plus for Xbox, and then I got it for Virtual Console on 3DS on my 2DS, and then I got it for Sonic Origins Plus, which was a disappointment that it was only that. Basically, I think that Sonic Origins Plus should have released the Game Gear titles. Yeah, sure, keep them on there, but it should have included 3D Blast, Spinball, Knuckles Chaotix, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine Genesis, all that. Just that, if anything. Make it the first time you ever re-release Knuckles Chaotix. I don't care if it was like remasters or emulated, but other than that, it's easily above Sonic 1, but still in C tier. Now, Wacky Waku Sonic Patrol Car. This is the exclusive Japan arcade game. Once again, this is one of the games that I emulated, along with Sonic Eraser. Only because they never released the game officially. Sonic Eraser was planned for Jen's collection, though, I think. So, and because I never figured out the controls of this game through my Xbox 360 controller, F tier. Sonic 2 Game Gear. Now this one, most people like, it is way too hard for it and stuff, but I like the challenge. And it is an easy B tier in my opinion, plus it's like fully completely different zones. And I thought that this could have been like easily a mainline title compared to Sonic 1 Game Gear. Maybe if anything like Sonic 1 Game Gear mixes around in Sonic Genesis. But Sonic 2 Game Gear, I feel like that was always like a prequel to Sonic 2, but like after Sonic CD. I even thought that Sonic CD came before Sonic 2. Before Sonic Origins even came out. It just made a lot more sense because Sonic still looked like Sonic 1 Sonic. Even though that the Sonic CD 2011 remake said that like this is the Sonic 4 prequel, well, that ain't selling it that well. But next we got Sonic 2. And the whole thing with Sonic 2 Game Gear is like Tails got kidnapped. It was still a fun game though, and I'm pretty sure like the Green Hill version of the stage is literally just called like, I think it was Green Hill Zone, and then it was like really late into the game, which I thought was pretty funny. Next, Sonic 2 Genesis. This is one of my favorite classic Sonic games of all times. It basically takes like the Sonic 1 fast-paced moments, but like you actually get to go fast as like the ground speed cap is disabled. Only nerds like me would know that. Just kidding. And basically, it basically takes like Green Hill and Starlight's speed moments and basically just makes that the entire game. There are some moments that are pretty slow though, like Sky Chase Zone was like, it still has a unique gimmick, which I still like Sky Chase. I don't care what anyone says saying that, but Metropolis Zone should not have been 3 acts. And there was like a video on my main channel where I actually like screamed saying "woo" with holding a copy of Sonic 2. On the Sonic 1 video after like what's in the series next. But other than that, Sonic 2 is definitely one of the peaks of Sonic, classic Sonic. Now next, Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop. Now, once again, this is another one of those emulated moments, but I never tried out this popcorn, so I can't have a full opinion on it. But I was actually able to control this game unlike Wacky Wacky Sonic Patrol Car, so it's going in F tier, but above it. Now, Sega Sonic the Hedgehog. I saw somewhere online that it was actually like meant. Some people like had a theory that this was like a prequel to Sonic 1, as Sonic actually managed to get kidnapped. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense. This is also the first appearance of Mighty and Ray before Mighty returned Knuckles Chaotix, and then both Mighty and Ray returned in Sonic Mania Plus, being a more widely known appearance. And honestly, it is a fun arcade game. If you ever see this arcade machine, use it. I never found one myself. Don't pass it up, and if you really want to emulate it, go find it somewhere. I can't tell you where it is. Because that would be pretty bad. Easy A tier for that. Now Sonic CD. This is another A tier game. I like the time traveling mechanic in it, honestly, but it's basically like Sonic 1, but like an extension. That's another reason why I thought it was always a sequel to Sonic 1, but not a sequel to, it doesn't go after Sonic 2. And it introduces Super Peel Out, all that, Metal Sonic, Amy. Also, Sega, if you're watching this, stop making Sonic have a crush on Amy. I know, that's what it is. I've seen it in tons of posts and stuff, with like the Twitter takeovers and all that, and like the Sonic Boom cartoon a little bit. Stop. Please make Sonic like not like her, or at least like her as a friend. Please, like, bring back Sonic Adventure era Sonic like properly, please. It would make it so much better, and it could finally stop looking on all these cringe moments where Sonic is like actually like has a crush on Amy for some reason. And please bring back the voice clips in Sonic CD to Sonic Origins. Maybe if anything, the classics mode. Force the original physics too. Don't have the option for Genesis version on classic mode. Same as Sonic 1 and 2. I know that I'm supposed to only be talking about the original Genesis versions, but force speed caps and all this stuff, you know it's there. It's in the stage select. Force it in classic mode. It would make me feel a lot better. Because the reason why I never played any classic modes other than Sonic CD, because you had the option to turn the original physics on in Sonic Origins, is because I never beat them, minus like Sonic 3 Knuckles, only because you can't turn on all those stuff without cheats. But Sonic CD has, I'm sorry about that rant by the way, has two soundtracks, one in Japan and Europe and one in North America. I personally prefer the North American by the long shot, but the Japanese soundtrack still has a great selection of music. It just doesn't fit in the stages that well. If anything, like Stardust Speedway present, only because it felt like more of a, it's supposed to be a party on the street kind of thing. And both of the boss themes, across all both soundtracks, suck. It does not fit well. Robotnik is not creepy, but I don't think Robotnik should be treated like a joke either. Creepy for North American, joke for Japanese. Now, Sonic Chaos. This is kind of like the Sonic 2 Game Gear, with like an extension, but also slightly easier. But honestly, I don't care. It was fun. Plus, this was the first one to introduce a lot of stuff in the Game Gear games. Spin Dash, Super Peel Out, and Tails as a playable character. Easily above Sonic 2 Game Gear. Definitely. Next, Sonic Spinball Genesis. I don't like pinball, but Sonic Spinball is actually quite an exception. It has an amazing soundtrack for using the worst Genesis soundtrack software, being Gems, and you get to like control Sonic in the air, which is something you can't do with pinball. And basically for each stage you have to collect all the emeralds, and there's more than 7, imagine that. But I don't think they're like Chaos Emeralds, honestly, because they're all blue. But then Sonic 1 Game Gear, they're all blue too, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Honestly, this can go easy bottom B tier. I don't care what anyone says. I prefer Spinball over Sonic 1 Game Gear, that's controversial. Now, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. I know it's a reskin of Puyo Puyo with like a different soundtrack, but this is peak puzzle game. It has like references to all the different like obscure robots in the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, mostly coming from the first episode of the series, which is really cool. And of course there's Grounder, the coconuts, and whatever you're supposed to, Scratch, that's the name of the chicken, I think. And then of course Dr. Robotnik himself. It's fun, it has an amazing soundtrack, peak puzzle game. Game Gear version, on the other hand, D tier. The only thing saving it from becoming F tier, or below Sonic Racer, is it's Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Now why do you find it worse? All the dialogue from the robots are gone. The soundtrack is definitively worse. I know it's, and most people are like, oh, well, it's 8-bit, of course that's gonna happen. But the Sonic 1 Game Gear version of like Green Hill Zone and the Unused Marble Zone was like pretty accurate and was actually a pretty good composition for a 8-bit version. So honestly, No, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine Game Gear is definitively worse. And Sonic Drift? I don't like Sonic in a racing car. I don't like any of the racing games. Except for like Team Sonic Racing. Definitely not biased towards Crush 40 in any way. Okay, maybe it is. Easy F tier. I don't, especially Sonic Drift. Sonic Drift is just not really that good. It hasn't aged that well. None of these games haven't really aged well in graphics-wise, but I feel like I don't care. I feel like pixelated stuff has definitely aged really well, especially nowadays with like recreating like these 16-bit and 8-bit style of graphics, which is really cool. And once again, Sonic Spinball Game Gear. This is one of the worst Sonic games of all times, in my opinion. It's impressive that they got the Genesis, like, Sonic Spinball on here. Of course, having to give up some things, like, it has a completely different soundtrack. It calls toxic caves, like, toxic pools for some reason. It's probably, like, something to do with, like, the Game Gear version being, like, the same as the Genesis version. But the Game Gear version came out, like, way after the Genesis version, at least for North America. But yeah, it is really bad. And it's really slow too, so I'd put it below Sonic Drift. And then we got Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and Blue Sphere mixed in one game. This is another one of the best classic Sonic games. And there's like obscure like did you know that Michael Jackson made some of the soundtrack? Sonic 3's competition menu and Act 1 boss, Carnival Night, Ice Cap, and Launch Base. All made by that, or if anything, it's like made by like stuff like Brad Buxer too, which I believe is the reason why I believe it's, I don't know. But the Origins version of the soundtrack sucks, like it's crap. Ice Cap Zone is fine, I guess, at least for Act 2, as it's like basically the prototype version, while the rest could have used the prototype version, which would have been definitively better. Proof that they could have used the prototype version, competition menu, unused song. The PC version is fine, I guess. I personally find it better only because of the high quality stuff, and the prototype is like good too. Have to take a drink. Michael Jackson's soundtrack is definitely better, and if you want the best experience of Sonic 3, play Sonic 3 Air. But I think you have to, like, if you want to play this in the most, like, official way possible, you'll have to be picking up your own copies of, Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles original cartridges, as the, Steam port of, Sonic 3 and Knuckles is gone from Sega Genesis Classics, which kind of blows. But other than that, it's basically like Sonic 2, but like upped up to the max. Blue Sphere is like some of the best special stages in the entire series. Knuckles is playable, because who doesn't love Knuckles? And basically, yeah, it is one of the peaks of stuff, and the Michael Jackson soundtrack is definitely better. I'm gonna make an entire video about hatefulness towards the Origin soundtrack. That'd be a horrible idea. Sonic Triple Trouble. Once again, it's kind of like Sonic Chaos 2. I believe it was literally called that in like other regions. Like Sonic Chaos is called Sonic and Tails, and Sonic Triple Trouble is called Sonic and Tails 2. But this is easily an A-tier game. It was the. Please tell me which one I'm supposed to use that won't get the fans angry. Is it Fang the Sniper or Knack the Weasel? Please tell me in the comments if there's anyone that's actually genuinely watching for the entire video. Please tell me. But it is a really great game. The soundtrack is pretty good for an 8-bit system. Try it out. If you own Sonic Origins Plus, take advantage of that. Of course, turning off the stereo effect, as that is in a patch that maybe no one knew that existed. Sonic Drift 2, worse than Sonic Drift 1. I don't care what anyone says. This should have been the Japan exclusive one. Tracks are better, yes. Computers, Rubber Band worse than Mario Kart 64. It is really bad. And it's really frustrating. And that's all I got to say about it. I just hate it. Knuckles Chaotix. This is one of my guilty pleasures of the series. I find it weirdly better than all these games in A tier. The soundtrack is actually really good. I think there's some people out there that says like the soundtrack is like really bad because it's like a weird mix of like CD quality but like Genesis quality at the same time, which I can get that because it's literally that. 64-bit era was like kind of like the CD style of things, while 16-bit was still like classic stuff, and 32-bit is like the weird in between. But it is a great soundtrack. The physics do get some time to get used to, but they're actually pretty good once you get control of them. Having the gimmick of having like two characters tied to like a weird magic ring rope thing. But yeah, it's a great game. There's no official way to play it right now other than on original hardware, so sadly, go emulate it if you are dying for it. Because trust me, you do not want to, like... Trust me. If you go onto, like, eBay, for example, I'm pretty sure it's, like, really expensive right now. I think I've seen one go up for, like, $1,000. Maybe slightly less. Maybe not that. I hope it's, like, at least less. Because it's a rare game. Not only is it 32X rare, but Knuckles Chaotix is pretty rare too. Tails Sky Patrol. This wasn't even supposed to be a Sonic game. Pretty sure it was like supposed to be like a Disney game of some sort. It's okay. The controls are really hard though, so D tier. The controls get hard to get used to, and plus it's not really that good of a game. Tails Adventures, on the other hand, is a really great game. It's like a Metroidvania game, but it's Sonic, being Tails in this case. It is really fun, and there's a password system, which I guess kind of sucks, but this is an easy, like, C tier above Sonic 1 Genesis. Sonic Labyrinth, easily one of the worst Sonic games ever made. Not as bad as Sonic Spinball Game Gear, but not as... It's just like... It's kind of like Sonic 3D Blast having like the top-down perspective while being isometric 3D, I believe it is called. And plus the whole thing with it is like Sonic slower, Robotnik swapped out his shoes somehow, something like that. The only thing that makes you go fast is spin dash, and it flies around the map, so it's either too fast or too slow in that game. Next, Sonic the Fighters, or Sonic Championship in North America, but mostly it became Sonic the Fighter since like Gems Collection on GameCube. Easily this is like a great fighting game. It's a slower fighting game, but it's not that bad. Plus like later versions of the game came with like the unused character Honey the Cat, which is pretty cool. But as the original game, it's not that bad. I'd say like easy A tier. Bottom of A. 3D Blast. Now, this one I always thought was mainline, along with like Sonic 2 Game Gear being like a prequel to Sonic 2, but the sequel to Sonic CD. I thought that this is like before Sonic Adventure, because Sonic Adventure uses way too much, reuses way too many stuff from Sonic 3D Blast, like the spin dash style and the music. I believe there's one for like Windy Valley and something for like Twinkle Park too. The spin dash only being held down by one button, being like CD style, but you don't even have to press down anymore. I'd say it's pretty good. It's B tier, honestly, but Sonic Blast, another horrible game. It's basically like Sonic 3D Blast having the pre-rendered graphics, but for 8-bit systems, being Game Gear and the weird Master System version for Brazil. And since the sprites are so big for the Game Gear, this is easily an F tier game once again. Worse than Spinball Game Gear, honestly. And heck, I'm trusting in Sega Sonic Popcorn Shop for having pretty decent popcorn for it to have a game in it. So it's going, Sonic Blast is going under that. Now Sonic 3D Blast Saturn and PC versions as well. I'm mixing PC and Saturn into this one. They have completely different special stages compared to the Genesis version, which I find them a lot better. They're like a way easier but fun version of the Sonic 2 half pipes. and it has like an atmospheric soundtrack to it too, and there are slight graphical upgrades. It's not impressive for the Sega Saturn anyway, but it's still a pretty good game. I'd say like maybe above Sonic the Fighters in A tier. Next we got Sonic R. This is my kind of Sonic racing game. One that Sonic actually gets to go on his feet. Imagine that. Sonic Riders was fun though. Sonic Riders is definitely really fun. Like, I'm not dissing on Sonic Riders in any way. That's the only racing game that I can accept that isn't like, that Sonic isn't running on his feet. But they should bring the Sonic Riders series back. I don't get why it died. I know that it died after Sonic Free Riders for Kinect on the Xbox 360, which I guess I get it. I know that it might have been like controversial to bring it back because like people hate Sonic Riders now with like Kinect. But once you get used to the Kinect, it's a pretty decent game. Play it along with the other Sonic Riders games. Do not pass them down if you're like a collector of games. But Sonic R, easily, it has a pretty great soundtrack too, being like having one of the, I think it was like one of the first Sonic games that had like vocals in it. Other than like Sonic 3D Blast Saturn, the Sonic 3D Blast Saturn had like the credits being like having lyrics to them, but Sonic R had like full lyrics to each song, unless if you really wanted to turn the instrumental versions on. But instrumental versions actually like removed a lot of instruments, surprisingly, which is pretty weird. I'm gonna put it like above Sega Sonic the Hedgehog in A tier, honestly. But yeah, Sonic R is okay. I'd suggest like using like the Sonic R Reloaded version. Like, get the original PC disc first if you want to get it officially, and then put it on your modern PC. Maybe you have to use an external disk drive most of the time now, but and then get the Sonic R Reloaded, all that. Get a couple like there's like a widescreen mod that actually like tweaks some sprites to make it look like it would fit for widescreen. And of course it has like the Sega Saturn lighting being a lot better than the PC version, so basically that version is the definitive version. So pick that up when you can. And I'm talking a lot, need some water. Next, my favorite Sonic game of all times, Sonic Mania Plus. There's just so much greatness in this game. It has some of the most beautiful pixel art of all times, being like really smooth pixel art too. It was like one of it's the first classic Sonic game to have like smooth rotation. It's not the first 2D Sonic game to have smooth rotation. It was like Sonic Advance that did that. But it looks like everything about it, the pixel art in the backgrounds, the bosses, the level design. I know that it's like returning zones from previous Sonic games, like Green Hill Zone and Chemical Plant we might all be tired of, but those versions of Green Hill and Chemical Plant Zone are absolutely amazing. It's just like, Act 1 of like the remake stages are like basically very accurate to the originals, while Act 2 is like completely like a modernized version of the stages, but while being like still a classic Sonic game. I'd say the only exceptions to like the Act 2 rule being like a modernized version was like Hydrocity Zone, and because it felt like it exactly like it would be a kind of like wrap up of Act 2 from Sonic and 3, and start a Speedway Act 2, but that isn't complaining. It is still, and the soundtrack is literally peak. The T-Lopes, what T-Lopes did with like the remixes of like the songs and the original tracks he made too, it's absolutely amazing. And the works that Hyper Potions did too is like, I can't get enough of. It's some of like my favorite songs in the entire Sonic series, along with like the Crush 40 music, because Crush 40 is my favorite band of all times. But it is peak classic Sonic. I wish that I need to get this in a physical copy form for Switch, to get like that reversible cover for it, and I think it came. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure if the Mania Plus came with like an art book too. I do plan on getting a physical copy of Origins Plus 2. My plan with like all the classic Sonic games is to like reverse their covers in the Switch versions, put them up on a separate shelf back there, and then my other Switch games, there might be a couple Sonic games that'll still be there, but like all of my other Switch games will go up here. And yeah, Sonic Mania Plus, peak. Buy it. It's peak freaking Sonic. Easy S tier above like everything else. Now Sonic Superstars. This was the biggest disappointment in my entire time with the Sonic series. And I'm probably going to change like the tiers a little bit anyways. Tails Sky Patrol can go in C tier, bottom C tier real quick. I know. Sonic Superstars is the biggest disappointment in the classic Sonic series. After like thinking of, like at first the trailers were like amazing. It was like, hey, it's a 2.5D game. Hey, at first Sonic 4 wasn't really that good, but maybe this one would be exception because this looks pretty good. It looks like really accurate to the Retro Engine games like Sonic Mania and then like the remasters of Sonic 1, 2 CD. And of course 3 and Knuckles later on, but that was like... I was more comparing it to that, the mobile versions of 1, 2 CD and Mania. I was like, this looks really good, plus, once again, if anyone made it this far, tell me if it's either Knack the Weasel or Fang the Sniper, whichever one is the more controversial in the Sonic series. It was like, hey, it finally brings back a guy from, like, Triple Trouble, and that's cool, and plus a new character you get to unlock at the end. But everything about the game was, like, a really big disappointment. The level design doesn't feel as, like, good as Sonic Mania ever did. And and I'm glad that it's finally, like, a fully original zones. It was, like, one of the first Sonic games to do that in a while. Like, Frontiers, like, as much as Frontiers was, like, good, and I only played it at friends' places, it once again remade, guess what, Green Hill Zone, Sky Sanctuary, Chemical Plant, and there was even, like, ports of sections from Sonic Generations. And, Sonic Superstars was basically, like, the first time that the Sonic series was, like, fully original, except for, like, I think the battle mode had, like, Green Hill Zone. But it, like, also bring back, like, all of the metal characters from Sonic R and stuff, or at least Mecha Sonic, not Mecha Sonic, Mecha Knuckles came back after, or Metal Knuckles. I'm stuttering a lot here. It brought back that, and then it had like metal versions of Amy and Tails too, which is cool, I guess. And I feel like this game more focuses on the fact that there's costumes for characters compared to the actual game itself. Which, the costumes are cool. I have all of them so far. I have, like, the Retro Diner Amy. I have the Shadow costume for Sonic. I have the Rabbit. I have all the Lego versions of the characters. Even Robotnik. With, like, the one... It was, like, a code that came with my version of the Switch game. And it does manage to hit 60 frames on the Switch, which is cool. But it is the most disappointing Sonic game. It's not as bad as Sonic 4. At first, it was like a pretty good introduction with like Bridge Island Zone, and Tealope's return for this, and which is great. He works, and then Pinball Carnival I thought was made by him, but it turns out it was made by someone else. It's still a banger though. And then I believe I can tell that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Jun Tsunoe once again returned to make crappy Genesis-style stuff again. I like Jun Tsunoe's work in the Sonic series. Like, he worked with, like, the Sonic 3 Knuckles soundtrack a little bit, I think. I don't know which tracks he particularly worked on, but he was clearly there. And he was, like, the main composer for, like, tons of different Sonic games. He's the guitarist of Crush 40. he does tons of good work, but Sonic 4's work and his Genesis style stuff in Sonic Superstars, keep that man away from it. I don't care what anyone says. Love that guy and all for making like the most beautiful guitar solos of all times in the music history, but please get yourself away from like the fake Genesis soundtrack, because I can tell it's fake too. Because why else would it have like, you have like the drums of Sonic 1 and 2, yet the rest of it is just like not from the Genesis era. You probably use like frickin' gems again from like Sonic Spinball, but like did not cook. So easily, bottom of D tier, worse than Sonic Racer. It was a big disappointment. The final boss is too slow. The special stages are like, had a cool idea, but are like, get me so freaking angry. Could be a skill issue, but it gets me freaking angry, and it's just I'd say the only way to save is Superstars if it had pixel art. And now I feel like they're gonna like never do that again. I'm pretty sure there's like a whole like thing on that, like, we're no longer gonna make classic Sonic games in a 2D pixel art style because it takes too long. I don't care if it takes too long, that just means you cooked. Sonic Mania Plus was amazing because you cooked on the pixel art. You had an actual decent soundtrack by not using the Genesis, the fake Genesis soundtrack or sound chip. Just, yeah. Other than that, with that is my definitive classic Sonic ranking. There could be some obscure ones that I'm missing, but I already have a few obscure ones here that probably make up for it. And yeah, Sonic Mania Plus at the top, Wacky Wacky Sonic Patrol Car at the end. And hope you guys enjoyed. I will be posting more on this channel once again more often, as I'm going to start to slow down uploads on my museum channel, which is my second channel. But you can feel free to check out all those channels if you want to see any more work from me. I'd highly suggest my main channel, as it's reviews of games in a humorous way, basically being a Scott the Woz inspiration. And also YouTube Hoops is available there too. So yeah, with that, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.